Hello there, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to do something a little bit more technical. Today we're going to make some rust effects for our miniatures. So for this video I have a Khan Wraith, and he's all painted up and ready to go. The only thing that's missing is his weapons looking a little bit plain. So we're going to rust him up and make him look very, very rough indeed. There's a couple of ways in which you could do this, and we're going to start by just covering the scythe in a silver tone. So with this you can use your own preference of paints. My preference being the Army Painter, but if you're a Citadel user you could use the Citadel Lead Belcher. It's completely up to you. And what you want to do is just cover the entire scythe, just being careful not to get any of the silver onto the handle of your miniature. And just make sure to cover the whole thing, both sides as well. And try to make sure that you put a nice even spread of colour across the miniature, like so. You don't want it to pool or be too thick in certain areas. You want to try to make sure that it's nice and smooth. Now when it comes to metal and making it quite battered, I normally do a few different coats of shade. Now starting with a Agrax Earth shade, which is a nice brown shade, adding to that sort of rusty effect that you can get on your metal. Once this dries down, then I move on to a Druky Violet, which is a purple tone, and I just add this in certain areas. And it's fine if it pools in certain places as well. And again, this is all personal, so you don't need to put this in like cover the whole scythe. This is just trying to get splodges of thicker areas to shine through. Now once that part is dry as well, then I'm also going to use a Null Oil, which is a black shade. And this is giving it a little bit of a darker tone, so this is going to run it down a little bit, make it look a little bit more grimy as well. Again, I'm just trying to pick areas where I want the shade to sit rather than covering the whole scythe in this colour. And once all that is dry, then we're going to dry brush some tones back up. So we're going to go back to the mid-tone, the original colour that we used, whether that be the Citadel, the Army Painter, or whichever. And you just want to lightly dry brush across the scythe just to get the highlights picked up on some of the edges and around those rounded rusty areas in the middle of the weapon here. Just be careful when dry brushing the scythe though. You don't want to go too hard and end up snapping the weapon off the miniature. Try to take your time and be as gentle as possible. And it's the same as always with dry brushing. It's always good to make sure to dry brush in light stages, so you don't need to go all at it all at once. Just build up in small stages. As you can see, I'm trying to use my finger as a bit of support for the weapon, because if I didn't and I just dry brush straight through, there's potential there of breaking the model. So with that done, I'm going to just do a highlighted dry brush as well. And what that means is we're using another silver, it's just a little bit brighter. So for this one I'm using an Army Painter Shining Silver, but if you're using a Citadel you could use a Runefang Steel, and that would do the same job as well. This one being a highlight, we're just picking out on mostly the very, very edges of the weapon. And that's one way of building your weapon into looking a little bit battered and a little bit bruised. But now to add the rest, we're going to use a technical paint from Citadel. This one is a Typhus Corrosion. And how you paint this is entirely up to you. You can put as much on or as little on as you like. Now I'm just dabbing it in splodges here just to show you what it's like when you put it just around the edge and you leave some of the silver showing through. But to give you a proper idea as to how this texture paint works, I will end up covering the whole of the scythe, just to give you an idea and an example. But if you like, you can just dot it around the rusted points, the edges where you can see it's really broken up, and have sort of a half and half two-tone effect between the silver and the rust. That would work quite nicely as well. As you can see here, this is what I'm just showing here, just a little bit, half and half. You haven't got to be too detailed, you've got to be careful with it. That's the best thing about these kinds of textures, is if you're quite messy, the end result does show that it's quite messy, quite a nice effect. Here we go, just picking out some of the edges that you really want. This is quite an interesting texture paint, actually, technical paint, because it dries down very dark. It looks like it's quite light when you first place it onto the miniature, but it does actually dry down very dark indeed, and that gives you a really good area then to lighten it back up and dry brush it back up. So once that's dried down, and you can see just how dark it's dried, and you've left little splodges of silver shining through, then you want to go in and just dry brush an orange colour onto this so that you get that rusty effect. Now you can use any orange for this if you just dry the paint off on a bit of kitchen towel or a cloth. The Citadel do actually make dry brush specific paints in the Rise of Rust, and that's a very good paint to go for. But for this I'm using the Vallejo. It was the closest orange to me, so this is the orange that we're using. And again, like always, build in that dry brushing up and just covering it in certain stages. So some areas may be lighter than others with rust, so you can put 2 coats or 3 coats of the rust and the dry brushing in that area. As I said, I've covered the whole scythe for this exercise just to show you guys how to make this kind of effect. Now when you dry brush this through, because of those dents in the scythe itself, in the weapon itself, those will remain dark, giving you a really nice contrasted tone between the brighter orange, the very dark down recessed areas. It becomes quite a nice mixture. So again, just take your time, build up those textures, build up the colour however you like. And there we go, that should be pretty much about as rusty as we need it to be. So I'm going to zoom in here, which is going to be a little bit difficult for my focus, but there's a reason for this. We're going to use a silver, but we're going to use the highlighted silver. So this is going to be the shining silver from Army Painter or the Runefang steel. And what you want to do is you just want to drag the edge of your brush across the edges of the weapon, the edges of the rusted miniature. And this is going to give an idea that the weapon, despite being rusty and old, has seen some recent use. So the weapon itself has clashed against other weapons or armour, or even though the weapon itself is old and battered and rusted, there are still some parts that have been clashed with other metals, and the rust has sort of broken apart, and you can see some of the lighter silver shining through below. But this is just an edge highlight. Again, the idea is to make your miniature pop on the table, to make that miniature really stand out. With a really dark weapon, your miniature is going to look or blend in with the rest of the crowd. But if you've got a nice light edge like this and some nice orange tones on that rust effect like so, then it's really going to make the miniature look great. Now you can as well, if you want, use that use this shiny silver area and just go around the edges of the circles and the broken patches inside. But again, that's personal choice, that's completely up to you. So there you have it. There is my Khan Wraith with a very rusty, putrid, horrible weapon, and this is a kind of weapon you would not want to be attacked with. I mean, think about that. Look at how rusty and horrible that is. It's quite a horrific, cool effect to get on your miniature. And here's a different model, just showing another example, another version as to what I've done for my Nighthaunt army. I've added a little blood and things like that to this one, but it's the exact same effect all the way through. And so there they are, my two Nighthaunt ghosts with their rusted orange weapons just there. And there, they look pretty cool. It's a really nice effect. It's an interesting and different way of making your miniatures sort of stand out and be a little bit different. So there you go, guys. As always, thank you very, very much for tuning in and watching my videos. Thank you so much for all of the support that I've had recently. I really hope that you take something from these videos, and thank you very much again.